All right, time for another Creative Changemaker mini episode, and I want to talk about feedback, which is more than just an underappreciated Jurassic 5 album from the mid-2000s, although that too. Now, feedback is a huge part of my work. Increasingly, a greater amount of my time goes towards giving and receiving feedback, both hearing other people's feedbacks and suggestions on things I'm working on and figuring out how to best incorporate that, and doing the same for others, trying to leave critiques in a helpful way that makes whatever they're trying to do better. I also recognize that we're living in this time where the barrier to leave comments on other people's work, especially if you're making stuff for the internet or just releasing into a very public place, that threshold is really low. And so I think right now one of the most important creative skills you can work on developing is having a good filter for feedback, knowing when to listen, when to act on people's suggestions, and when it's right to be more dismissive about that. Opinions and feedback are not the same thing, and so, being able to sort which is which matters a lot. So when I first wanted to approach the topic of feedback, I couldn't decide whether I wanted to talk to people who are more on the giving end of it, like how to give better feedback, or people who are on the receiving end, how to recognize when feedback is worth listening to and incorporating. And I think I'm going to end up just doing both, talking about how to recognize what makes good feedback good, so that in either scenario, you're finding something helpful. So let's begin there. Number one, good feedback is less about catering to individual tastes as it is about accomplishing an objective. Okay, so one of the things that bugs me a bit when receiving feedback is when somebody just says something along the lines of, that doesn't work for me, I don't like that, fix it. And then they have the expectation for on the next go round for it to look different or to be something better. A big part of the reason why is that tastes are always going to be subjective. You know, you can grab the most acclaimed movies of all time, and if you're dissecting them scene by scene and just giving them to different people, some people are going to be like, this scene really was off-putting, and other people, it's not going to bother at all. You can't take something apart that granularly without realizing that, we're just all a little different, and trying to just cater to the tastes of your immediate feedback giver is not going to always be the right move. So it's important to have feedback that goes beyond just a reaction to what you're seeing based on impulses, based on aesthetic, and one that goes to why. If something moves just a little too fast-paced, it's like the problem with that is you have good stuff there, but you're presenting it in a way where so much of it is not landing, it's just moving too fast. When you say this is something that just feels irrelevant to the overall topic, those are things where you're pointing out how the choices the creative made are not serving their objective. That's also why it's important to have a feedback giver who is aligned with you as far as what is the objective you're trying to accomplish with what you're trying to make, And I'm not always this utilitarian about creative work. It's not always like I'm trying to make campaign material to persuade you to do this exact specific item. Some creative pieces really are about asking questions, provoking thought on a certain topic. But even that is a goal. And so you want to make sure that your choices are serving that goal, and a good feedback giver is helping you see where that might not be the case. Good feedback aims to bridge the gap between intent and impact. So this is not too far what I've been saying. People who give good feedback tend to ask why a lot of times. They're asking a lot of clarifying questions. Here's one move that I think is almost always a good one, is just when you're giving feedback to someone asking, like, okay, why did you decide to do this? I feel like they do that a lot on the Great British Bake Off. Just like, interesting, going with raspberry there. Why? And sometimes this is a really good moment, because either you'll hear someone say like, well, we're going with a clotted cream and a custard, and these are all very heavy flavors, and just throwing in the tart of a raspberry is going to add balance, and that's really well thought, versus you might hear someone who just says like, I don't know, I like raspberries. And in that moment you discover, okay, this wasn't thought through very well. Here's a an area where we can explore, just, gain more intentionality where there wasn't that before. The framework I like to use for giving good creative feedback is just simply saying, what is your goal and how can we remove the things that are getting in the way of that goal? For me, a lot of the video work I do, a lot of the writing work, removing things that get in the way looks like taking out scenes, taking out blocks of text that aren't actually serving the purpose of the greater piece. And this is hard for me because sometimes I get really attached to those parts, but people who have given me really good feedback have helped me see that those scenes, those moments are, while good, while they're, not poorly done, they're just not serving the overall purpose. And when it comes to people's attention, when it comes to delivery, time, space, all that is precious. So much from those first 2 points kind of lead into this third one, and it's that good feedback demonstrates trust in the creative. And this is why when you hear of people who have like a director just eviscerate their performance, like, this was garbage, I can't believe you're even here, take everything back, throw it in the garbage and start all over, that's not helpful feedback. Not only because it was mean, but that's true. Not only because you're not building off of what's there, although that's true, but really you're just trying to strong arm a short-term decision and you're not investing in the long-term development of the creative. And that's a huge loss. Having a long-term creative collaborator who you can work with on multiple projects, who you can turn to again and again, that's one of the most valuable things in any sort of creative sphere. And to burn that bridge just because you're trying to strong arm having things your way in the short term is not worth it, And for me, one of the things that best helps people become the best versions of themselves creatively, or even as human beings, is trust. So showing the person that you trust them, you trust their decisions, you're just trying to help give them clarity, that really matters. When you don't have that, it just turns into micromanaging, and that is not good feedback. Finally, good feedback recognizes when an idea might be a good idea, but not in the right spot. And so this is something I run into a lot. Like I mentioned, one of the hard things for me to do is to take bits of copy or scenes from videos that aren't serving their overall purpose and to feel like I'm just erasing them. Thankfully, we're at the spot now where technology easily allows you to paste that somewhere else, paste that in a spare doc, to grab that scene and create a new Premiere project so you can maybe work on it another time. Like, your ideas that you have to walk away from have so many more opportunities to come to life in a different way. And so it makes it much easier to move on from them. And good feedback will tell you when it's the right time to do that. It's actually rare that a creative decision, in my opinion, is just outright bad. Like, maybe if it's racist or homophobic or something extreme, but really creative decisions are just more often just like distracting or confusing or out of place. Good idea, wrong spot for the execution. And so good feedback helps people reimagine where things could go, thinks less in terms of yes, no, good, bad, and instead just thinks of how one item flows into the next to again serve the overall purpose. Good feedback always frames things around opportunity. Like, you have the opportunity here to help people see this topic in a different way. There's a quote from a writer and speaker who I like a lot named Todd Henry, who has written a whole book about working with and managing creatives. And he says that feedback isn't just about pointing out what's wrong, it's also about painting a picture of what's possible. Creativity is all about making connections. Making connections means going beyond yourself. And so that means there's always going to be value to having somebody else from outside your own perspective who can chime in on your work and make it even better at what you're trying to do. But some people give better feedback than others. That's just how it is. And so it's important to develop the skill of recognizing who gives helpful feedback and who gives it in a helpful way. And in this video, I've mostly been talking about feedback for creative work, but it really would not surprise me if some of these tips and suggestions and ideas went beyond creative work, went beyond the world of writing and storytelling and design and videos and all that, and applied to some of, just personal feedback, personal development, that sort of thing. So as always, take what works for you. And thanks for listening to this mini talk, and we'll talk again soon.